Alright, today's lesson is about subtracting integers. So we've already done adding integers, and we did that with our counting chips. You could either draw it or you could use a number line. But for counting chips, remember we had the reds, which were negative, and then we had what normally is yellow, I'm going to use green for it up here, was positive. And one positive and one negative canceled each other out and made zero, or a zero pair. We're going to use the same concepts today to talk about subtracting integers. Now it can get a little bit confusing, so please pay attention. When subtracting integers, you can use a rule called keep, change, change in order to turn your subtraction problem into an addition problem so that you can follow the same rules that we used last time. So if I had a problem such as 2 minus 5. Now normally in elementary school they tell you to put the 5 first and then the 2. Put the larger number first and then the smaller number. And that worked for all positive numbers. Right now in 7th grade and on up through the rest of your career, negative numbers can be used. So we're introducing the negatives now. So now we're not going to change it to 5 minus 2. It has to say 2 minus 5. Remember that subtraction signs and negative signs are basically the same thing. They both mean the opposite of. So if I have two positives here and 5 negatives here, I can do keep, change, change. And what that means is keep the 2, change the subtraction to addition, and change the sign on the number. 2 plus negative 5. Now when I figure this out, I would have 2 positives and 5 negatives, and then I can cancel out my 0 pairs. This one and this one make 0, this one and this one make 0, and I am left with 3 negatives. So the answer to this problem is negative 3. Alright? You could also use the opposite of to figure out this problem. So I would have 2 minus 5. I have 2, and what's the opposite of a positive 5? The opposite of a positive is a negative. So I can add the opposite of 5. I'm going to add the opposite of 5, which is negative 5, and come out with the same answer of negative 3. There's lots of ways that you can think about this. You can think about it as money. I have $2, okay, and then someone borrows $5 from me. Well, now they owe me $3, okay, because I only had 2. You could also say, money-wise, you have $2 in the bank. You take $5 out. Now you owe the bank $3. You're in the hole, or in the red, they call it when you're talking about money. $3, so that's a negative 3. Let's take a look at some of the practice problems. For example number 1, if you had negative 6 minus 2, for keep, change, change, you would keep the negative 6 the same, change subtraction to addition, and change the 2 to negative 2. Okay, we could also use the opposite of rules. So we would have negative 6 and then add the opposite of 2. The opposite of 2 is negative 2. So we have negative 6 and add the opposite of 2, which is negative 2. So now we have 6 negatives plus 2 more negatives. If I were to draw those out, I'm going to end up with a total of 8 negatives. You can use whatever method makes sense to you. I borrowed $6 from Mom, and then I borrowed $2 more, so now I owe her $8 instead of 6. Let's look at another example. Here we have 5 minus a negative 1. We're going to keep 5 the same, change subtraction to addition, and change the negative 1 to 1. Using the wording as the opposite of, we would have 5. We're going to add the opposite of negative 1. Okay, so that's 5. And add the opposite of negative 1 is a positive 1. So now we have 5 plus 1, and that is 6. Okay? Remember that subtraction, it means add the opposite of, and then you use the number that's after it. This would be, for example, 5. You have $5. And then someone who owed you money gives you back their dollar, the dollar that you gave them. So now you have 6 again. Right now I want you to do the secret question. I want you to write the secret question at the top of the page. And the secret question is, where were you born? We're going to do one more example, and then I'm going to have you finish these on your own. So, remember to use the little drawings or a number line to help you with this. For the last example, we have 8 minus 13. We can do keep, change, change. We're going to keep the 8, change negative to positive, which is the subtraction sign. Remember, subtraction and negative are the same thing. Then we're going to change the 13 to a negative 13. Let me write that out. 13 to negative 13. Okay? The other way you could think of it is we have 8. We're going to add the opposite of 13, which is negative 13. Alright, so that would be 8 adding negative 13. When I draw this out, I'm going to have 8 positives and 13 negatives. And then I'm going to cancel my 0 pairs, so this one and this one cancel, this one and this one cancel. I can actually do 2 at a time here. So these 2 and these 2, these 2 and these 2. You only cancel if they're opposites. If I had all negatives here, I'd just add them together. But since I have opposites, my opposites cancel out. Now that leaves me with 5 reds, which is negative 5 represented. Okay, so there's a difference then between 8 minus 13 and 8 minus negative 13. 8 minus 13 means 8 and the opposite of 13, which is negative 13.
Teachers and students, please pardon this interruption, but we do have a maroon Ford Expedition in the parking lot, the teacher's parking lot, that has its lights left on. You may want to take care of that so that you'll be able to leave at the end of the day. Thank you.
Okay, and then we have 8 minus negative 13. So we're going to have 8 and the opposite of negative 13. So this one comes out to be, on the top, my first example, comes out to be 8 plus negative 13, just like we did over here on the left. This second example is 8 and the opposite of negative 13. Now the opposite of negative 13 is positive 13. So we have 8 and positive 13. I don't have to write 2 plus symbols, I can just write 1. Okay, so this one was 8 and the opposite of 13. This one is 8 and the opposite of negative 13. So that's our difference here between these two examples. A lot of people like to just take, if you have a double negative they call it, which is a subtraction sign and a negative sign right next to each other. you can take and kind of make the little parenthesis and the subtraction and negative signs into a plus. 8 plus 13. Kind of a little shortcut. Those negative signs have to be right next to each other. We can't combine these two negative signs and make them a plus. They're separated by a number. These two signs up here are right next to each other, no numbers in between. So we can make that into a plus. You have a few more examples to do over here. You've got 4 through, I believe, 9. A couple of them are word problems. So I want you to try all of those, and we'll see you tomorrow or the next class period, and we'll talk about this a little bit more.